As storytellers, we believe in applying what we've learned about storytelling. And so today we're going to demonstrate that for you. We're going to be going back to our a similar exercise for today that we did in our first writing exercise video here on this channel, and that is some cards, some 3x5 cards that we have written down, specifically today, locations. And this is because we need a location for our third act for the mission in the story that we came up with in our previous couple of videos, I believe, where it is the story of what does it mean to be a courageous person and what does it mean if you are a coward in the military. And so we pitted a very brave person and a coward together, and we have that kind of being the main conflict in this particular story. So, and just for context, the coward would be the person who is the captain of this specific unit, and the courageous person would be like the second in command. So, in doing that, as in every military movie, you kind of need a mission, right? So for our mission, I did not know what the location for said mission would be, so we took the liberty of just saying, hey, we'll do it in a video. So we have 4 cards here. We have caves, we have a boat, we have an oil rig, and we have a military base. Now, the reason we picked these 4 specific locations was for story purposes. This story is going to be set either in the 90s or the 2000s, not quite sure yet, but in a time where we did have satellite imagery, but it wasn't as advanced as it is today, because for this particular story to work, we need for there to be some information that the unit would not know until they got to the location, and then they found out, oh, hey, this place has this, or, you know, our method of egress, our method of getting out of this mission and getting away is rendered useless because of this new piece of information. So we picked each of these because realistically a military base, an oil rig, a boat, and caves being the best option, or the best example for this of we need some place that would be reasonable, that a satellite imagery wouldn't give you all of the information for it. So that's why we came up with these 4 specific ones. And the reasons are story driven because that's what we need in the story. So when it comes to a military base, this is kind of the easiest one, but it makes it too much of a an action movie, in my opinion. I don't want this to necessarily be an action movie kind of story. I am less on the lines of Michael Bay for this one, and more on the lines of like Hurt Locker or something like that, where the point of this particular story is not the action. So military base, probably too many people there. The third act becomes just a shootout. Don't really want that. The oil rig is one that I would really like because I feel like it's a nice remote location, and there are very limited ways of getting out, getting away from an oil rig once the mission is complete, whatever that is. A boat is a very similar thing. Again, limited options for getting out once you have completed your mission. Very remote, keeps it very hush-hush. Boat, I think, though, has a more, it leans more towards like a military base style thing, where I think there might be too many people on a boat, as opposed to an oil rig where the majority of the people would be the workers and not necessarily like military people or, you know, bad guys. Caves, I feel like, would be a great option for what we need with the lack of concrete information and new information that would come out during the mission. However, Sicario just did it so well that I feel like I don't want to go in that specific direction for it, just because I feel like it's already been done very well. And if I'm honest, I haven't seen a lot of like military bases or military style movies that take place on an oil rig, and let's be honest, U.S. government's all about that oil, so it would totally make sense that they would want to go take over an oil rig. So that is what we're going to be going with. And now we just have to figure out what are the details, or at least what are some of the details that feel like they jump out to us from this specific location. So when it comes to an oil rig, specifically an oil rig, when you are thinking about a location, especially one in which like some action will take place, it is generally good, or at least I have found it to be good, to make sure that you are using what the location gives you, right? So an oil rig is going to give you something very different than, say, caves, right? An oil rig can give you the added danger of there's a very flammable stuff on board, right? On an oil rig. So that can give you a sense of what kind of complications can arise in this specific location, and not just arise in this specific location, but that also helps with making the complications viable and reasonable. Because the last thing you want your audience to say is, well, why is that, barrel of oil just sitting there in a cave, right? You don't that like those two things don't necessarily add up. Whereas a barrel of oil that could be, set on fire or shot and explode would be right at home on an oil rig. So things like that are what you want to kind of use your location to help you out as a storyteller. And that can make it rather easy for us. I feel like, for me personally, when I think of an oil rig, this would be like an oil rig out in the ocean. So that immediately gives me a sense of how is the unit going to get there, right? How are they going to get there? How are they going to get out? And so it would probably not be in, U.S. waters, right? So this oil rig would be off the coast of a foreign country, which means we can't exactly just go there immediately, right? And another thing is, on an oil rig, if there are bad guys on the oil rig, let's just throw in there that they have some anti-aerial defenses, right? Some rocket launchers that can take out helicopters if they, start coming at the oil rig. So with a relatively easy, like, placement of something that you wouldn't necessarily find on an oil rig, now we can really limit the amount of options for our main characters to get to the location. So if these guys are going to an oil rig that is out in the ocean, most likely they would be part of the Navy. So via sea, via water vehicle would be the seemingly obvious answer. Now the question is, do you want it to be a water vehicle that is on top of the water or under the water? These being most likely a Navy unit. They can for sure have some, pretty cool like underwater propelling devices. Again, have to do research on that. But either that or just take a boat. And honestly, it might be better to take a boat, because if you want this to kind of be a story that can be told with, let's be honest, a modest budget. Let's not go for a crazy budget where we got underwater filming as well with some interesting, propelling stuff underwater where we have to get scuba gear. We kind of want to keep it on a reasonable budget. So let's just take a boat. Let's have our characters take a boat. And that incites me to think, well, where are they getting this boat? So it would make sense that an oil rig would have a location that is on the mainland, where the oil rig workers tend to go out there for a few weeks, if not like a month or two at a time, and then come back and spend time on the mainland, probably with family and stuff like that, for a while, and then go back. So how do they get there? Well, helicopters are kind of expensive, so boats much cheaper and easier to get. So naturally, to me, that would be just kind of where, if our characters are going to take a boat, they would probably get it at the place that the oil rig workers get their boats from. So now we have a secondary location that is tied directly to the oil rig that gives us a way of our characters getting from the main land to the boat, to the oil rig, and that could potentially help them get to the oil rig without being shot at, right? Because if the bad guys are on this oil rig and they see one of their own boats coming, well, now they're probably not going to take shots at them, right? They're going to see their own boat and they're going to say, "Cool, my replacement is here," or whatever it is, right? So that would be that is just what my mind goes to as far as like what would be the best way of getting our characters to this oil rig, and also allowing them to kind of have some subterfuge, right? One of my favorite words as of late, subterfuge, allowing them to use a boat from the enemy. That way, the enemy doesn't realize that they are there until they are, on the oil rig and taking it over for themselves. So that is all from that one prompt of an oil rig. Now we have two locations. Not only do we have an oil rig, but we also have some kind of port, a small city. It could be like a little fishing village that would house the workers and our bad guys, whoever the bad guys are that are not currently on the oil rig. Because they do need supplies and stuff like that. So now we have, I'm gonna say like a small town, not a big bustling city, but a small town where our heroes have to now infiltrate this little town, and they have to figure out a way to steal a boat, but not just steal a boat, but get a boat and not let the people in the town know that they are stealing the boat. So, because if they did know and they were like, "Hey, that's totally some American, soldiers," they're probably going to that oil rig. They probably would just call up the guys in the oil rig and let them know now our soldiers are walking into a trap. So, again, from this one card, now we have a nice fleshing out of our main mission, right? We have a location. They have to get to the oil rig. And how do they get to the oil rig? Via boat. And then that boat comes from the nearby, the mainland fishing town. And so now we have two locations. We have kind of the semblance of the mission coming together. Just from the prompt, we get kind of how the mission needs to play out, right? They have to get to whatever country they're going to. They have to get to this fishing village, and they have to kind of keep incognito while in this fishing village and manage to steal a boat while also being incognito. So this turns from less of an action movie and more into like an undercover, like spy kind of thing. Not spy thing, but still a military mission, but they have to blend in, right? So that is what I am thinking from this oil rig, and I feel like that helps me now understand what my second half of my second act and going into my third act, what is that going to look like? We have our characters having to get to this town, then they have to go through the town and they have to get this boat, and then once they have the boat, that's not even the start of their like technical mission, right? But that's like the preview of the mission. So they have to get the boat, then once they have the boat, now they go to the oil rig and now they take over the oil rig, right? So hopefully you can see the reason as to why we would pick these kinds of locations, because I guarantee you that if we sat down and we took the time, like we just did, to come up with or to use these other three locations and to figure out what we want to do with them, that we could, just like we did with the oil rig, kind of follow and connect the dots of what needs to happen in order for us to get to that specific location. And then that helps us flesh out our story more and gives us more for our characters to do. Because it would be bad storytelling to just say, well, they get to the oil rig or they take a boat. It is never a bad idea. In fact, I think it's the best way of telling a story to kind of figure out where you need to get to and work your way backwards and kind of follow this, retrace the steps that are logical to get to that final destination. So that is something that we have learned here on this channel at Frame Perfect, and we learned that from reading books about storytelling and watching other videos about storytelling and listening to people who have done it before. And that's why we always start off our videos with we talk about how we try to learn about storytelling. And so hopefully you can get the idea of how to figure out what a third act and second half of your story can look like when you just start with the location and then kind of work your way out and start with your most important thing, right? Where are we going? And then just kind of slowly peel back the layers of that onion to see what naturally should happen to get there. I hope that you learned something today with what we did. The exercise was using a location to work your way to a big portion of your story. And I do feel like I understand the story a lot better now, and I understand where things need to go in order for us to get to what I want it to be. And honestly, you guys, this is another thing in storytelling that I think is great, is mixing it up. Whenever you feel like you're in a slump, get some cards out, write some things down, write some options down. Maybe if you can't decide, write the options down and then try it. Just pick one out at random and see where it leads you. And you'll be surprised at what you can do if you just mix things up. That is going to be our writing exercise for this month. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, keep writing.